In the grand courts of Tudor England, few stories are as scandalous, dramatic, and tragic as that of King Henry VIII, his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and the woman who would change everything, Anne Boleyn. What began as courtly admiration turned into one of the most infamous love affairs in English history, forever altering the monarchy, religion, and the fate of a nation. When Henry VIII married Catherine of Aragon in 1509, he was just 17 years old, young, handsome, and full of promise. Catherine, the daughter of the powerful Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella, had once been married to Henry's older brother, Prince Arthur. After Arthur's death, she was left a widow. Years later, she married Henry, and for a time their union was strong. Catherine was admired for her dignity, intelligence, and devotion. She was loved by the English people and seen as a perfect queen. But behind the grandeur of court life, Henry's deepest desire was for a male heir. Catherine gave birth to several children, but only one, a daughter, Mary, survived. As the years passed, Catherine aged and Henry's impatience grew. He began to see her not as his beloved queen, but as the obstacle between him and the future he imagined for his dynasty. Around 1522, a young woman named Anne Boleyn returned to England after spending years at the royal courts of the Netherlands and France. She was clever, charismatic, and unlike any woman Henry had ever met. Anne joined the household of Queen Catherine as a lady-in-waiting, a role that placed her close to the king himself. It wasn't long before Henry noticed her. She was elegant, quick-witted, and unafraid to challenge him, something few people dared to do. Unlike many women who had been drawn into Henry's attention before, Anne refused to become his mistress. She was bold and strategic. If the king wanted her, he would have to make her his queen. At first, Catherine may not have seen Anne as a threat. Ladies-in-waiting often came and went, and Henry's flirtations were nothing new, but soon whispers spread through the court. The king's gaze lingered too long, his letters became too frequent, and his presence in Anne's company too regular to ignore. Catherine, ever dignified, began to realize that her marriage and her crown were in danger. Henry's infatuation with Anne deepened into obsession. He wrote her passionate letters, calling her "my mistress and my heart's delight." He promised that one day she would be his wife and the mother of his sons. But there was one problem: he was still married to Catherine, and the Catholic Church forbade divorce. Henry became convinced that his lack of a male heir was divine punishment for marrying his brother's widow. He demanded that the Pope annul his marriage to Catherine, claiming it had never been valid in the eyes of God. Catherine refused to accept this. She insisted she had been a true and faithful wife, and she fought back with courage and grace, defending her marriage before the court and the world. Catherine's resistance was not merely personal, it was a bold stand rooted in faith, dignity, and political acumen. She argued that her marriage to Arthur had never been consummated, making her union with Henry both lawful and sacred. With poise and conviction, she defended her position before the court, appealing to the Pope and invoking her royal lineage as the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella. Her refusal to accept an annulment placed her in direct conflict with Henry, and her defiance became a symbol of integrity across Europe. The Pope, Clement VII, found himself in a precarious position, caught between Henry's demands and the influence of Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, who staunchly opposed the annulment and exerted pressure on the papacy to uphold Catherine's rights. As the legal and theological debate dragged on, Henry's frustration mounted. He enlisted scholars and clergy to support his claim, including Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell. who would later become key figures in England's religious transformation. Their arguments that the Pope had no authority to override divine law and that Henry's marriage was cursed laid the foundation for a radical shift. Catherine was separated from Henry and barred from court, yet she continued to assert her status as queen and refused to acknowledge Anne Boleyn or accept Mary's illegitimacy. Ultimately, Henry's obsession with securing a male heir and legitimizing his relationship with Anne led him to break from Rome. In 1534, the Act of Supremacy declared Henry the supreme head of the Church of England, severing centuries of papal authority and igniting the English Reformation. Catherine's unwavering stance had forced Henry to reshape the very structure of English religion and monarchy. Anne, meanwhile, remained firm in her refusal to yield to Henry's advances unless he made her queen. She used her charm and intelligence to keep his interest alive while carefully shaping her own future. The more she resisted, the more Henry desired her. By the late 1520s, the scandal had spread across Europe, known widely as the King's Great Matter. England's court was gripped by tension and intrigue. Catherine endured public humiliation, her faith and loyalty unshaken, while Anne Boleyn's influence grew. She was no longer just a lady-in-waiting, as she had become a political force. Some admired her wit and ambition, seeing her as a symbol of modern femininity. Others viewed her as a seductress who had bewitched the king and displaced a beloved queen. After years of failed petitions to Rome, Henry took decisive action. In 1533, he secretly married Anne, who was already pregnant with his child. The union was declared valid by Cranmer, now Archbishop of Canterbury, and Catherine was stripped of her title and sent into exile, never to see Henry or her daughter Mary again. What began as a courtly romance had escalated into a seismic upheaval of church and state. Henry's passion for Anne had changed the course of history, but it came at a steep cost. Catherine lived out her final years in quiet isolation, steadfast in her belief that she was Henry's true wife and queen. Anne, once triumphant, would soon face her own downfall. Her charm and defiance, which had once captivated Henry, would later be seen as threats. The story of Henry, Catherine, and Anne is not merely one of love and betrayal, but of how personal desire can reshape the destiny of a nation. History remembers Catherine as the wronged queen and Anne as the woman who changed everything, two formidable women caught in the storm of one king's ambition. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow history lovers. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or questions. We'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for more stories that shaped the world, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.